Welcome everybody. Get yourselves comfortable. Get yourselves focused here. We got a full crowd tonight, everybody. So we're excited. It's we call this internally. This is the playoffs. This is kind of what we work all season for, right? In our financial aid world, October with November 1st right around the corner. This is it. So this is easy for us to get up for. We're psyched to be here, and give us 1 or 2 minutes. We're not going to take too long to let everybody get settled because we got a ton of content to cover. I know you guys got a ton of questions. We're going to get to as many as we can, and then we'll get rolling. So a couple of housekeeping things first. I promise you we'll end up repeating this several times because if tonight's like most nights, we get the question several times throughout. Everything's being recorded tonight. Everybody's going to receive the recording. Okay. So if you registered tonight, if you leave early, doesn't matter. You're going to get the recording tomorrow. You're going to get the slide deck. So keep that in mind. Now, just like we said, I think today, you got an email today. I highly encourage you to stick around to the end of tonight because we got some pretty special today only promotions that, hint, involve experts, people on our team, could be Peg and myself, could be our other experts, actually going over these financial aid applications with you guys, right? Or whether it's before you submit, ideally, or even after you submit. And then we have some options where we can do these financial aid applications for you. You don't even have to touch them if you don't want. So we'll talk about that at the end. The other thing here is, since we have a lot to cover in a short window, you're not going to be able to do the forms. I don't think. God bless you, and you can try. I don't think you're going to be able to go fast enough to actually do the FAFSAs and the CSS profiles right now tonight. So I would encourage you to just kind of take it in, take notes, and again, you'll get the recordings, and then you can kind of go through these forms at your own pace, when time allows. So we're going to do some quick intros here for those of you that are seeing us for the first time. My name is Matt Carpenter. I'll introduce Peg in just a second here. I'm currently in the Halloween capital of the world in Salem, Massachusetts. I grew up in this neck of the woods on the North Shore of Boston here. And I've been doing this my entire career. This is really the only language that I speak professionally, is all things financial aid. So I like to think I know what I'm talking about. I enjoy it, and this is what we do all day, every day, and we like to do it. So, and our goal is to really help people that are in your shoes figure out a way to navigate this thing, hopefully in a way that's a little bit less stressful, because I know it's insanely stressful, and in such a way that you're paying less for college, right? And doing it the right way, because there is a right and the wrong way, even regardless of who you are. So that's our deal. I have with me today my buddy, my colleague, my partner in crime, Peg Keogh, the fairy godmother of financial aid herself, checking in from Seattle here. So Peg, I'll let you say hi, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah. So similar to Matt, I haven't been doing this my whole career, but I'm from the financial industry, financial planner by background, have kids, have been through this, have done 8 FAFSAs and half a dozen CSS profiles. So I feel your pain. You'll get through it. Started my own business in 2014, just focusing on helping families, and then joined College Aid Pro last year. It was just time for me to have a team, and I was getting a little burned out doing my solo deal. So it's been a great change, get to do all this fun educating of you guys, because the more you guys know, the less stressful this process is. And honestly, the less money you're going to leave on the table, and you just get through it in a much better way. So I know this isn't the most sexy topic, and we're all going to send some vibes to the universe that the CSS profile works really well today, because it was working great. And then about 30 minutes ago, it started getting really slow again. So I've got screen prints if we can't take you in live, but we will source that it's gonna rock tonight.
And that's also an authentic part of the experience, right? We did this last night. CSS profile basically wasn't working. For those of you that have already got into these applications, odds are that you've experienced this yourself, and the CSS profiles just loading. You get kicked off the FAFSA. that's that's a fun part of this whole experience. So that's part of the deal, guys. So we're going to a lot of this is like psychological and just kind of persevering here, which we'll hit on some of those tips tonight as well.
That's part of the reason I'm going to share my deck here. You don't want to be waiting till the last minute, find out when those priority deadlines are and shoot to do it a few days before your first deadline, because stuff happens, as we say, so all right, let's get going here, because we got one thing we didn't say: if you have questions, we welcome them. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can tonight. That's, we tag team on this, so put your questions in the Q&A, not the chat. And that's where we'll look at them and do our best to answer. If you want to be anonymous, you can check a box. And just for everybody that came on later after Matt said it, tomorrow you will be getting an email with the recording and the slides, and we've got a financial aid form survival kit. We got you taken care of, basically. It'll be more information than you probably want. So that's all coming. So if you miss something, don't worry about it. You're going to have it tomorrow. So we're College Aid Pro. I don't even know if we said that. And literally our mission is to end student loan crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. So this is one little piece of the process. You got to submit these forms so the colleges know your financial situation. So here we go. That's Matt and I. Little disclaimer, we got attorneys in the world, probably have some on the webinar. Basically, we're gonna counsel you on how to do these forms. Ultimately, it's your form. Always be honest, but less is more is pretty much our motto on this. But your answers, should be accurate. Okay, so as Matt said, I know there's a lot of, as I like to say, agita, right? There's a lot of angst around these forms. And I just wanted to kind of set everybody at ease, like maybe we're walking into a spa for a massage, which I love so dearly. When you're doing these forms, you can take breaks, you can save and come back later, and you can fix mistakes on both of them. On the CSS, it's one time, but you can fix your mistake. So, I think, as Matt said, mindset is a big part of life. And when it comes to these forms, just take a lot of deep breaths, because you can get yourself psyched out and make mistakes that maybe you wouldn't have made. Okay, so let's get going here. Matt, I will let you jump in here.
Sure. So, so really quickly, you got an email from us earlier today to set up your accounts on mycap.collegeaidpro.com. It's a free website, great free resource. The reason being, we're here tonight to talk about the financial aid applications themselves, but let's not lose sight of the big picture. The reason why we're doing this, and there's a few of them, but the reason why is to maximize our odds of getting discounts, whether it's financial aid, whether that's scholarships. And a huge mission for us is to help families figure out, what are colleges actually going to cost me? And we want you to know this before you even apply to school. So this is our platform. So for those of you that have set up your accounts, you recognize this. This is your home dashboard. If you haven't, make sure you do it. And I recommend you do it now. It takes a couple minutes. We ask you about a dozen questions, and then boom, we get popped in here. But instantaneously,
I put the link in the chat too.
Okay, so the link for this is in the chat if you don't have it. But instantaneously, what we're able to figure out is, where do we fit in this whole thing? Where does our family rank on this financial aid spectrum? What are colleges actually going to cost us? Okay, so immediately what you'll see at the top of the screen is your EFC. So you might have heard that acronym before, your expected family contribution. It's basically the foundation of what colleges think you can afford to pay for college per year per kid. Okay. And there's 3 different EFCs that any given college could use. So that most colleges, right, and just about all public schools use the federal EFC. Okay. Now this is a family of 4 from my neck of the woods, a senior in high school, a sophomore in high school, average income, average savings. And you see they have these 3 different EFCs, right? A lot of the private schools, NYU, Boston College, Boston University, use what's called the Tulane, University of Miami, use something that's called the institutional methodology, or the institutional EFC. And then you have your really, really competitive schools from an admission standpoint, the Ivy Leagues, the Amherst colleges of the world, that use something called the consensus EFC. Now, I just told you more than you need to know. What I want you really focused on is, what are the net costs of the schools that you're considering going to be? What are you going to actually pay to go to these colleges. Okay. And in most cases, this is a kind of a standard case. The sticker price for most families is irrelevant. It's even downright deceiving. Okay. Because, for example, this family, this Massachusetts family, is going to pay less to go to the $84,000 school than they are to go to the in-state state school, because Amherst College, like schools of their ilk, are very generous when it comes to need-based financial aid. Okay. And this family is going to be eligible for need-based financial aid there. Now, again, I kind of gave you more insight than you need. I just want you to think about, put the colleges that you're applying to in here and figure out what they're going to cost. You don't have to go to all these different net price calculators at the colleges. And oh, by the way, ours are way more accurate as well. But this is kind of where we want you to live. And I think you'll find other value here too. We're going to talk to you, not just what are they going to cost, how affordable are they? There's a really robust private scholarship search engine. And then when it comes time to actually apply, when you get accepted into these schools, you're going to be able to put your offers in there, and we're going to tell you if you got a fair offer. So that's, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I just want to make sure before we get into the nitty gritty of the forms themselves that you do take advantage of that, because it's at least equally as important as getting these FAFSAs and CSS profiles submitted correctly. So I'll hand it over, or if you want to bring the deck up again, Peg.
Sure.
And guys, so I've seen a bunch of questions in terms of deadlines and do we have to, how do we know who requires what? The short answer to that is every college is different, right? This is not a one size fits all. It's not a very streamlined process, as you're probably discovering already. But as your list of colleges come to fruition, it's up to you to go on each of their specifically financial aid websites. Every college has a website within it dedicated to financial aid. And that's where you will find out, here's what they require, here's when they need it by. Okay. So go ahead, Peggy.
All right.
And I think I'm on the next slide here. We can just give me the next slide.
Yep.
Okay. So the FAFSA itself, right? This is a form that, just have the expectation every single college in the country is going to require this form. So you are doing this form and you're sending it to every college that you apply to. Again, tomorrow you're going to get the deck with all these live links in it. So I'm not going to hit on every single thing that you're going to have, in your inbox tomorrow, but a couple talking points here. In order to submit the FAFSA, as well as in order to access the FAFSA, every student needs their own FSA ID. It's really just a username and password, okay, tied to their social security number, date of birth, et cetera. And then one parent needs an FSA ID as well. Okay, so in order to access and submit the FAFSA, the student's going to need an account, an FSA ID, username, and password, and one parent is going to need a username and password. This is where you go to set up your account. It's really straightforward. And that's how you actually access the form itself. And here's the hyperlink to the FAFSA form itself. And again, some of the higher level talking points, when they're asking about income, we're only focused on 2021 tax returns, 2021 income. It's always what's called the prior year. And as you've heard already, and you will continue to hear, you have to make your deadlines. Okay, have a mindset that you need to make your deadlines, and know that every college has different deadlines depending on when you apply. Now, the earliest possible deadline that exists is November 1st, right? So it's next Tuesday, and very, very few schools have that deadline, and it only applies if you're applying early. So for the vast majority of you, you're not going to have a November 1st deadline, but if you're applying early, it's worth going to double check your school's financial aid websites. You can go to the next slide, Peg. Okay, so before Peg kind of gets granular, starts going line by line through this form itself. Again, I'm not going to read what you're going to receive tomorrow, but I want to burn in your brain what I consider to be a few very, very important things, and really some critical mistakes that folks can make. The biggest one here is that families will accidentally include their retirement accounts on the FAFSA. And arguably for me, this might be the most common, the biggest mistake that families make. So if you leave here with one thing tonight, if you remember one tidbit tonight, okay, think of me and say, I remember that guy talking about the FAFSA told me not to include my retirement accounts when they ask me about my net worth and my savings and my investments. I can sleep well if that kind of came through to you tonight. Do not put your retirement accounts on the FAFSA. If you're a homeowner, do not include the equity you have in your primary residence on the FAFSA, okay? And another, what I consider to be the biggest and most common mistake that parents will make on both the FAFSA and the CSS profile is that for families that own a 529, they typically include that as a student asset as opposed to a parent asset. If you have a 529, you as the parent own that account. So please, please, please report it as a parent asset, not a student asset. Now, the reason why that's so important is that colleges put way more emphasis on any money in the student's name, right? So not only will you be reporting it incorrectly, who cares about that? You're going to cost yourself way more money and way less eligibility for financial aid if you report it that way. So those are the huge ones. I just want to make sure go front and center here. And Peg, you can kind of dive into the specifics, and obviously these other mistakes that are obviously also important. You're going to receive these tomorrow.
All right. Okay. So I set this up originally with screenshots in the FAFSA because the FAFSA tends to not behave. So I didn't want to bring you guys in with, the little circle going round and round. So as I said earlier, we're going to hope that the CSS is going to behave in a few minutes, but I want to give you a visual of the FAFSA. So as Matt said, you got to get that FSA ID and password for the student and one of the parents. If you're divorced, then it's custodial parent. If you haven't done that and you have a deadline coming up, just get it done because it takes a few days to process, and then keep that because you're going to need it every year. So when you look up here, you see this is kind of the layout of the FAFSA up here. So we're on the student demographics page. So what I want to call out here, there's some pretty basic information about the student and the education, but you notice here they ask, are you interested in being considered for work study? Just answer yes to that question. You may not be eligible for work study, so it may be moot. But I've had kids, when you don't mark it, they don't get awarded work study. And that can be a valuable part of a financial aid package. So just mark yes to have your options. You're not guaranteed a job. And by doing that, right, you have to apply and get the job. You're not guaranteed to get it anyway. So just leave that option open. You're going to see these dependency questions, and you'll see them on the CSS as well. What they're trying to figure out is this student independent? Most kids are not independent. Even if mom and dad don't want to help with them paying for it, that doesn't matter. There's a few questions that if you can answer yes to, you're considered independent. You don't include parent assets, parent financials in general. Most people are going to be marking none of the above, but I wanted to just flag that. As you see here, I'm already on section 3 on dependency status. School selection, pretty self-explanatory. You're going to go in and put in the colleges. You can put in up to 10 colleges in one FAFSA submission. This form is free, pretty much the only thing in this process that is free. And you can put in 10. If your child's applying to 14, put in those 10, submit it, let it process, look at your student aid report, go back in, delete 4 schools, plug in the other 4 and resubmit it. If you have 25 schools, you can go in there 3 times. But it's 10 at a time. So just keep that in mind. So when you answer all of these questions about dependency, then it's most likely going to show this. I will provide information about my parents because this is a dependent student. If you mark I'm unable to provide that, you're going to get a message that says, you need to reach out to the schools. This can affect your financial aid. So that's not a good box to click. You're going to want to share the parental financials to get the aid in most cases for most families. So now we're into the parent demographics. So these are some important questions here. They want to know how many dependent children the parents have. So in the FAFSA, they're pretty good about giving you some information. There's always these little question marks. So read everything clearly, make sure you're not super tired when you're doing this. So basically they're saying, Who else lives in the household that you provide over half the support? So it's siblings is typically what we're talking about here, right? So if you have 3 kids, you would put 2 here. The next question is other dependent. So you need to provide at least half the support, but if grandma lives in the house or something like that, that would go here. And then when you get to the next page, they're basically going to give you a nice summary up here. This is your household size and this is the makeup. If you look at that and you're like, uh-oh, I messed up, just hit previous, go back and fix it. Until you submit it, you can go in here and edit everything. The next question is very important. How many kids do you have in college? And you notice I'm saying kids, because if you are in school, that doesn't count. And it says it here in big, bold, capital F, do not include parents, but do include yourself, the student that's submitting the FAFSA, and anybody else. I had twins. That was always 2 on mine. If you have a child who's already in college and you're doing this for your second child, you're going to put 2. That's really important because for this coming year, that can reduce your EFC by almost 50%. So you want to make sure you get that question right. Okay. Now we're coming up. If you look up here, now we're already in parent financials. This form isn't too long in actuality, and it's going to get even shorter next year. So this is where we're getting into the meat and bones of this. So they're going to ask the same questions about the student and the parents as far as financial information. You see here, did you completed your tax return? If you haven't, you can mark it, but most people we're past the extension deadline. What form? What was your status? Now, there's this thing called the IRS data retrieval tool. And if you decide to do this, what it's going to do is it's going to pull your financial information right from the IRS site. So there's no right or wrong of should I use the DRT. The big positives of using it are you don't have to enter all those numbers and maybe mix them up, right? Another positive is it's coming from the IRS and families get verified. I have verification written over on the left. Basically, that's the college reaching out and saying, hey, Jones family, send us your tax return or send us a tax transcript. We want to see your financial tax information for 2021. You're less likely to be verified if you use the data retrieval tool because one could argue you've kind of already been verified. The downside of this is that when this data comes in, it says transferred from the IRS in the field. So if you get an EFC that's high, and I've already seen one question in here, my EFC is high, what do I do about it? And they come to me or they come to Matt or one of our college planning experts, and I say, let me see your SAR, your student aid report. I can't see the numbers that were inputted. So that can be a problem. I mean, what I usually tell people that I'm working with is, hey, do it manually. You can always go back in and use the DRT later, but it's again, it's your form. So it's your decision. We're just here to kind of give you the pros and cons of this. If you did a rollover in 2021, you left a job and moved your 401k to an IRA rollover, that can be a big problem because there's a box you have to check. And if you miss it, it includes it all as income. So up to you, but we just want you to understand what the DRT is. We also recommend jot this down as homework. It's a quick and easy thing. Request online, make sure you're on an IRS website, your tax transcript, because if you get verified, that's what you can turn over to the school and you'll have it in your file and you'll be good to go. So if you choose not to use the DRT, I want to show you what you're going to be asked. So the first thing they're going to ask, and they tell you very clearly, what is your adjusted gross income? They give you the line on the 1040. So just go look at you need your 1040 sitting there, right? Put the number in. So that's your AGI. Then they're going to ask what you earned from work. And they're going to very clearly tell you, if you're a W-2, you're going to have wages on line 1. That's what you're going to put. If you're married, you got to break it out between mom and mom or mom and dad or dad and dad, right? Whatever your family makeup is here, you've got all your wages on line 1. So break them apart. If you have a sole prop, you have other things on your schedule 1, just look at the instructions and plug that in for each parent. If you're divorced, just the custodial parent's going to be filling it out and you only have 1 box filled. So that's earnings versus adjusted gross income. Then they want to know how much you paid in tax, because that actually decreases your EFC because that's money that you didn't realize that you can't use to pay for college. Line 22 is what you want to put there. There's another line a couple down that says your total tax, and people like to think and say, but Peg, that's not the line. It's line 22. Just follow the instructions. Don't overthink it. Do you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah,
Matt?
let me break in quickly here, Peg, because
Sure,
we're getting a couple repeat questions. Number one, divorced and separated families. Once Peg gets through the FAFSA, I'm going to spend some time talking about, okay, what does this mean if we're a 2-household family? And I'll talk about the differences between FAFSA and CSS Profile, because they are handled drastically different. The other one we're getting a bunch is, hey, we're applying to more than 10 schools, but the FAFSA will only let us put 10 schools on at once. Here's how that works. Let's say that you're applying to 12 schools. You're right, you can only send it to 10 schools at once. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your first 10 schools in, complete the form, submit the form. It takes about 2 days. Plan on 2 days for the FAFSA to process. So if you submitted this tonight, what are we, Thursday, you could log back in on Saturday. It should be processed by then, right? And at that point, you would log back into the FAFSA. You would go to the school selection section. You would erase 2 of the schools and then add your 2 additional schools that didn't make it on that first batch, okay? Once your FAFSA processes, those colleges have that forever, essentially, right? Even though you're going to take 2 schools off of that list when you log back in, you don't need to fret. Those schools already have them. They've already been processed, so you're all good. And that's just how it works, okay? Whereas the CSS Profile, there's no limit in terms of how many schools you can put in there. So those are the 2 big repeats here, Peg.
Yeah, and I said the thing about the 10, but that's good to say it again, because I know that's a big question people have. Okay. So now we're moving on to more tax questions. So some of these questions are going to be applicable to you, and that's fine. So the bigger ones, I'm putting the arrows on here. Some of these other ones might be applicable to you. These are parent. This is all about the parent. We're not to the student section yet. But the one I have the arrow here, untaxed portions of IRA distributions, just go look at your tax return. If you've got those lines there, you're going to fill that in, but it says in bold letters, exclude rollovers. I mentioned rollovers earlier. You didn't realize that money, please don't put it on there as income. That will shoot up your EFC big time, and you move that money from one account to another. You did not realize it, so you don't have it for college. If you made a deductible IRA contribution, it's going to show up on your Schedule 1. If you don't have a Schedule 1, you didn't do it. If you're self-employed, SEP simple KEO plans, other qualified plans, you're going to see that on your Schedule 1. So if you don't see these lines, it's 0 for you. Also tax exempt interest. If you have anything on line 2A, I mean, the idea is some of this stuff is not taxable by Uncle Sam, but in the financial aid world, they add it back in. That's what happens. That's this concept of untaxed income. Next page. If you're divorced and you are paying child support, put what you put for 2021. Remember, as Matt said, this is all about 2021. And then if you had any of these other earnings, go ahead and put that there. We're still on parent financial information, okay? We're not to the student yet. Here's more untaxed income. The most common ones, if you're divorced and you receive child support, you've got to put whatever you receive for child support, not what you were supposed to get, but what you actually got in that tax year. Another very common one for a lot of people is the third one down. If you are saving pre-tax voluntarily, your employer doesn't mandate it, and it's coming right out of your paycheck and it's going into your 401k, 403b, that gets added back in. That is going to change next year. So that's a very good change for families. But for this FAFSA, it's still here. So if you maxed out your 401k, bravo, but it is going to get added back in. And look at the instructions. You're going to look on your W-2 box 12, and you will see some letters with dashes and a number after it. That's what you're going to put on here, and you're going to combine it if you're married. Just put it into one box. Also, other untaxed income. If you have workman's comp, disability benefits, you can always click this little question mark too. So these are all the different untaxed income items. And if you need to fill in something that you haven't filled in and you go to move on, it'll tell you. And many times you have to put a 0. You can't leave it blank. So now we're into the parent asset. So remember what Matt said. This is all about non-retirement assets, not 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs. So what is your current balance in checking, savings, cash? The opposite of a 2-year look back, if the asset balance is very current, then parent investments. So what goes in here is pretty much everything but your retirement accounts and checking and savings. So if you have a stock portfolio, if you have vested RSUs or stock options, if you have real estate other than your primary home, the home you live in, the equity in that real estate, meaning the market value minus the mortgage or mortgages, if you've got a HELOC and a primary mortgage, that gets thrown into this bucket as well. If you have a business and your business has less than 100 full-time employees and it's a family-owned business, then you're not including the value of your business in the third question. If you, I always forget that I have these boxes here. So now I'm on the third one. If you have real estate and it's part of a business and you own a home and you rent it out, you don't have 100 employees, it's a family-owned business, that doesn't get included in the second question because your real estate is part of a business. If it's not part of a business, then it's going to go in the second question. So I just want to emphasize that again. If it's a family-owned business with less than 100 full-time employees, the value, meaning what you would make if you sold it, not the income, that's going to come onto your tax return and almost always be part of your adjusted gross income. If you're a sole prop or an S corp, it flows right onto your 1040. We're talking about the value of the business. You have inventory, you have office space if you were going to go sell it. So those are the 3 key questions. And as Matt mentioned, if you have 529s that you as the parent own, that's part of the second question here. And it's all the 529s, not just the 529s for the one student. So keep that in mind. So that's the parent assets. Now we move on. You see, we're on 6 here. Now we're at student financials. It's going to be basically the same exact questions there you'll be as the parent. So we're not going to go through every page. It's literally the same. One thing that sometimes parents get a little stressed, like your child might have not submitted a tax return. So just choose that, not going to file. And if they made $1,000 mowing lawns like I used to do, or babysitting or whatever, just put it in there. Just follow the prompts. They probably didn't owe any tax. If they filed, then say they filed. It'll ask you if you want to use the DRT for your child too, if you filed a tax return. The other thing about the DRT, if you decide to use it, it might not work. It's finicky. So if things don't match perfectly between the FAFSA and your tax return, it might give you an error, in which case you got to go manual. Okay. So now up here, I just want to draw your attention to, this is on every page. So as you're working, it's supposed to be auto saving. You can go up there and click save. You can hit previous. You can navigate out, in and out. So you finish the student financials and then you've completed the FAFSA. And the next step is to put in that FSA ID and password. It's going to prompt you for this. You're going to accept the terms and conditions and you're going to e-sign. And after you submit it, you're going to get a confirmation and print that or print a PDF, whatever you want to do, because you will have a confirmation number on there. It will list all the schools you sent it to, and you will have your EFC. It will give you your EFC about halfway down. So definitely keep that as proof that you submitted it. If you go and do it again, because you have more than 10 schools, do the same thing. Save that confirmation because you'll get a second confirmation. So that's the FAFSA. And then we've mentioned a couple of times you can get the student aid report after you've submitted the FAFSA.
The FAFSA and all of its glory. Peggy, I'm freaking sweating over here, buddy.
You got to take your flannel shirt off.
We're already over 200 questions. These which is great, right? I mean, we really appreciate all the participation and engagement for you guys. And we probably should have said at the top, we know we're not going to be able to get to every question tonight. We're doing our very best. I promise you. I don't know if you all can see that I know Peggy will as well, but we're not going anywhere. So fret not if you do not get your question answered tonight. Again, I told you by the time we leave, I'll talk about what options you guys have to meet on a one-on-one basis, or if not, just kind of continue to engage in these types of things that we do all the time and will continue to do. So just want to flag that, but keep them coming because we're going to do the very best we can. Okay.
All right. So now we're on to the CSS profile. So as Matt mentioned, this is the form, and I think I've already answered a question on this. This is not in lieu of the FAFSA. This is in addition to the FAFSA at about 300, mostly private, but there's a few public schools in there that require this along with it. And it's very important. I was just talking to my mom earlier, and she said, oh man, I just realized that we have to do the CSS on a bunch of these schools. So it's important. If you're in my cap, you'll be able to see what forms are required. It's just at your fingertips. So this is the second form administered by College Board.
So,
Okay.
I mean, the CSS profile, guys, I mean, this is, in my opinion, the real beast, right? The FAFSA, I don't think, and I do not want to make anybody feel less than if you're having a lot of trouble with the FAFSA, because tons of people still have a lot of trouble with the FAFSA. But the CSS profile, in my opinion, is what really, I can understand why people are pulling their hair out, right? This is several hundred questions, a lot of nuanced questions, invasive questions. I think this is the one that's really causing people to stare at the ceiling at night more so than the FAFSA. You know, and our good buddy and colleague, Bill Rabbit, he likes to tell us his prescription for the FAFSA and the CSS profile. He prescribes folks and lets them know that you can get through the FAFSA with a glass of wine or two. The CSS profile at a minimum is going to require the whole bottle, right? Or whatever, pick your poison, basically. So I think that's an appropriate mindset. Of course, I'm talking to 21 and over folks here, hopefully just parents. I'm not talking to you students, should you be on here. But, and obviously I say that partly in jest, but I do want to kind of come back to the fact that, you know, from a you know, not pulling your hair out standpoint, you don't need to complete either of these forms in one sitting. You can save it, go back when you're starting to lose patience, you know, step away, shut it down for the night, go back tomorrow. The CSS profile in particular, I think they took 5 steps backwards this year in terms of ease of completion, because you don't even know where you are in the form. There's not a progress bar. So anyways, Peg will get into the specifics, but I do want to talk about divorced and separated families. Okay. For 2 household families, whether you're divorced or separated, and this system doesn't see a difference between those two, even if you're going in the midst of a divorce or separation, they don't see a difference between the two. There's only one household that completes the FAFSA, and that is whomever the student lives with the most, right? Or the custodial parent or parents. The only parent information that goes on the FAFSA is whoever the student lives with. The other parent, the biological but non-custodial parent, it's as if they don't exist for colleges that just require the FAFSA. For just about all colleges that require the CSS profile, they're going to need the CSS profile to be completed by the custodial household. They're also going to want a separate, unique CSS profile completed by the non-custodial household as well. Okay, there's some exceptions there, but odds are, if a college you're applying to requires the CSS profile and you're a divorced or separated family, a 2-household family, they're going to need one completed by the custodial parent or parents, one completed by the non-custodial parent and parents. So that's the big one. So, okay. So I think that kind of sets the stage. You can go to the next one, Peg, and I'll just kind of quickly hammer some kind of big core principles for the CSS profile before you get granular here. Number 1, if you don't have to answer a question on this form, don't answer it. Okay, that's one of the big ones here. Only answer the questions that are required. The next one I'm going to skip to here is question 6, and I've got a lot of questions about this already tonight. This is the end of the form. You basically have an opportunity to give some color, basically write in paragraph form, hey, what's going on outside of the numbers that we should know about? Okay, we leave that blank, guys. We want to hold that back. We want to wait until we get these financial offers from the colleges first. Then we're going to go back to them and say, now here's what you need to know, college. that you didn't know outside of just the standard numbers on our tax returns and the ones you asked on the FAFSA and CSS profile, this is going to maximize our odds that we're going to appeal successfully for more financial aid, okay, more need-based financial aid and or scholarship. So big takeaway here, kind of blanket recommendation that we make, leave that section blank. So go ahead, Peg, you can dive into the form itself, and just for a time check standpoint, we got 20 minutes on the dot. And if we need to stay a couple of minutes later, certainly we will, but that's our update, Peggy.
Okay, I'm unmuting myself. There's a band playing downstairs, so hopefully you guys, I'm enjoying it, but hopefully it's not loud. They just stopped.
We can't hear it. I wish I could.
Okay, yeah, they just stopped, so hopefully. Okay, so now I'm gonna hop into the CSS in a minute, but I've got a few pages here, and then we'll see if like I said, I'm gonna source that it's gonna fly for us tonight, so I can be in there with you guys. So you need to list the schools, right? Just like the FAFSA. So you're going to search for the different schools that require the CSS. One little tip here, when you're putting the school in, put the name of the school. Don't put the word university, because then it starts pulling up all the universities with, University of Arkansas from the beginning of the alphabet. So put a name in there, and that'll just help you get to it faster. That's just a little tip and trick there. This is a change from this year, which is a great change for families. If you can click, this part isn't new, but the AGI, if your adjusted gross income is 100,000 or less, when you get to that part of the form and you let them know, a pop-up is going to come up that says, based on this information, you get a fee waiver, because the CSS isn't free. Remember, I told you the FAFSA is the only thing that's free. There's a $9 registration fee, and each school is $16. But if your AGI is 100,000 or less, that will be waived. And if you click any of these items, it'll be waived as well. So that's a nice savings. And Matt mentioned this about required versus not required, and we're going to hit it a bunch of times here. But in the parent details section, I want to bring this up. They're going to ask for Social Security numbers. And I've always said, don't share that, it's not required. But what Matt shared with me with the school, Boston University, some schools, that one we know for sure, but some schools will use the social to match the student with the form. So it doesn't mean if you're still uncomfortable sharing that, don't share it, but you're probably gonna have to make a phone call to make sure that the forms match up there. That bothers you, then share it, right? The other piece that they ask for on this page, which I don't recommend you share, is your level of education, because the more they know, if you've got an advanced degree and you tell them that, they're going to start forming impressions of your level of wealth. And less is more. Be honest, but less is more. As I've said, that's our motto here. So as Matt shared, and I probably did too, but on our kind of tips and tricks, the questions that are required say required on the CSS. So you see right there where I put the box. AGI, line 11, you've got to submit that. So go ahead and do it. The next question about your Schedule 1, even if you have a Schedule 1, it's not a required question. So don't hit yes or no. The minute you hit one of those, all you can do is toggle between them. You can't hit no and say, oh, I wasn't supposed to hit anything. That's what Peg said, and pop it off. It doesn't work that way. And I think that's probably intentional. On College Board's roadmap, right? So if you're not going to answer it, don't click yes or no. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is and it might have logged me out. So let's see, I'm going to stop my share here and see if my CSS, just give me 1 second because it locked me out. Matt, do you have any question you want to share for a second here while I log in?
I'm going rapid fire here best I can. I'm trying to see which ones are coming up most frequently. I guess going back to submitting so not everybody, you don't necessarily have to complete the FAFSA, right? And I'm getting, do I still do this even if I don't qualify for need-based financial aid? Short answer to that question is yes, right? We give that recommendation to everybody. You do not have to, but a lot of colleges, in order to be even eligible for scholarships, they require the FAFSA and the CSS profile if it is a CSS profile school. We always use NYU as an example because they fall into that category, and they got one of the more popular schools in the country from an application standpoint. The other reason is that if you want your kids to have any skin in the game, the best way to do that is through the federal government student loans. In order to get those, you have to complete the FAFSA. Even if you didn't need or want your kids to borrow, still do that. Complete the FAFSA, take that federal government student loan in their name, pay it off on their behalf if you have the ability to do so. You do that every year. They graduate with established credit as 22-year-olds. You're not co-signing on their first lease, right? So the short answer is, regardless of where you are on the financial spectrum and what resources you have, we recommend you do the FAFSA for usually more than one reason.
All right. Okay, so that's a real nugget there that you got. That's a little off topic, but it's very relevant to, it's a great question. Should we submit this? So this is your dashboard. Once you get in here and you've done the initial stuff on the CSS, this is what your dashboard looks like. As you enter schools, they're going to show up here. You can leave. As you see here, we're going to go back, continue application. If you're divorced, they're going to be asking for the non-custodial parents' information, because they're going to send a second application. It's called the non-custodial CSS profile to that other parent. Okay, so this is looking like it's not going to cooperate with me tonight. So I think I'm going to go back to the screen prints. If this happens to you when you're in here, this is a reason, as I said, don't wait till the last minute, because if it's super, it'll eventually get to the page. But it's been very weird. It's been great until yesterday, and earlier today it was fine. Then it was slow and back and forth. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to waste our time here. I threw some slides on here, so it's not as good as being in there. And I'll pop back in there because I'm sure it'll eventually get there, so I can show you guys the different pieces. But I want to hit some of these pages so that you, when you're in there, you're not caught off guard. So as you can see, I already, the key pieces of data that are required are going to be very similar to the FAFSA. Your AGI, line 22 of your taxes. MJ in my deal, that's the mother. This is a divorced family. What are your wages? It's the same question that they asked on the FAFSA, the earnings. It's required. Then they're going to ask income and tax information. If it's not required, and I wish I could be in the CSS because I could show you how many questions are not required. If they are not, just skip them. You're going to be sending your tax returns, your W-2s, all of this information to the colleges. You're not lying. You're not trying to hide anything. Just answer what they're telling you you have to answer. So if you made tax deferred payments, same thing as the CSS, any HSA, FSA, if that doesn't ring a bell, that means that you didn't do it. Your family didn't do it. Don't worry about it. If it doesn't let you go forward, you might have to put a 0 there. But typically in a lot of the not required questions, you don't need to do that. It's going to ask about alimony received. That's a call out. That's not taxable anymore, but they ask for it and it's required. So you've got to be honest for that tax year. Put in the alimony you received, and they're definitely going to look at that in the equation. Okay. They ask for income from other members of the household. They give a really nice description. So just read through it. If you don't have other members in the household, that's going to be 0. These are all required questions. If you have a housing allowance, if you're clergy, that kind of deal. And if people are giving you money, and this is recurring, not a gift, right? This is, I'm helping you pay your bills kind of money, then you put it here. But if not, you shouldn't be putting it. Don't share, oh, I got a one-time gift of $100 from somebody. That's not reoccurring help. Other untaxed income, this should be ringing a bell. Some of this is very similar to the FAFSA, and they spell out what they want here. So always click on the carrots, which I did, so you could see it. And if it's applicable, share it for that given tax year. The CSS does this, and you don't see this on the FAFSA. They're going to ask you about what you expect your income to be in 2022. What do you expect the student income? What do you expect your income, your student in the summer? All these questions. If it's not required, skip it. If it's required, our whole deal is leave things blank. You want to share this stuff on appeal. You want to be in the driver's seat. You share too much on the CSS profile. You get your financial aid award letter for your child, and then you don't like it. And you go back and say, hey, but I told you about my medical expenses. I told you about this. And they say, yes, we took that into account. You want to have that kind of as ammunition, right? You want to hold it a little close to the vest. Then you want to share it after you get the offer. So just keep that in mind. There's a whole special circumstances section. We tell you, don't fill that in. Use it for appeal. Do that on appeal. Okay, so here's some questions about the mom. Okay, it's not required. The mom knows if she's employed by others or self-employed, so leave it blank. What retirement plans do you participate in? It's not required. This year, this question was avoidable in past years. This year, this is required, and I'm not going to go on a soapbox. We don't have enough time here, but they do ask for the balances in your retirement account. This is not included in the formula, in the methodology. I see this coming up on an appeal, because if we start seeing bad offers, we might be reaching out, helping families to say, hey, are you including any of that $700,000 that I told you I have in my 401k? It really bothers me that they're asking this, because it's none of their business and it's not part of the equation. But unfortunately, it's a required question. So it's your form. So you decide what you're going to do. We're just here to give you a heads up of how this looks. So if you are divorced or separated, they're going to ask some questions, and you want to share the non-custodial parents' information, because they've got to send that non-custodial CSS profile to your ex. And that's very important, because until both of those come in, your financial aid file is not full. It's not complete, right? So you want to provide that information. Year of separation. They're going to ask, Bill is the non-custodial parent. You might know your ex's employment. It says in the fine print, you can put unknown. I wouldn't touch this. I wouldn't touch these questions. It says, how much will the non-custodial parent contribute? Unless it's in writing and like it says here, there's a written agreement, do not touch it. Let him or her answer that question on their profile, because if it doesn't match, that's going to cause issues. Just leave it alone. Let them answer that question and put unknown there, because for all you know, your ex could have changed their mind. Unlike the FAFSA, you're going to have to report on your primary residence, right? So they're not going to ask you for the equity. They're going to ask you when you purchased it, what the purchase price was, what's your market value. I've already had questions in here. There's something called the IRS quick sale rule. I think Matt mentioned it. Take 15 to 20% off your lowest honest market value of your home. Do not overestimate. This can cause your EFC to go up. A lot of colleges think you should be tapping your home equity to pay for college. That's an appeal item. How much of my equity did you look at? And we've had a lot of success getting more money for families by having that conversation. And then they're going to ask for your payment, your housing payment. It's your principal and your interest, not your homeowner's insurance and property tax. They're going to ask about your assets, just like the FAFSA did. Checking and savings, investments, no retirement investments. They spell it out for you very nicely. And then you answer these questions. Now they're breaking the real estate out. Okay. So what's the real estate? It's interesting. These are all required to click yes or no. But then as you move on, it says, how many real estate properties do you have? It's not a required question. So you can leave all that part blank. They're going to see it on your tax return. You're going to have a Schedule E probably. So you're not lying. You're not hiding. Let them pull that and you'll have a discussion about it potentially on appeal. Okay. They get into the weeds on your business. They ask about all of these things. Okay. Here you see here, number of real estate properties. This is required. So you put 1. As you move down, how much is this? How much are you using it? Anything that's required, answer it honestly. But the other things, leave blank. That's just basically, I know I sound like a broken record. And actually, this might have the same deal again. Okay. So I'm going to stop for a minute. This is when you're submitting. I do want to hit a few more. Let me hop over just by the off chance that this puppy is working. No, it's
And
still
just a heads up, it's 5 of anyway.
Yeah, I know. The last thing I want to talk about, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Matt, is there's a question on here that says, how much do you think your parents are going to pay for the 23-24 school year? And every parent doesn't know how to answer that. What I would tell you is this question can really hurt you. You want to be honest, but you don't want to overestimate. If you put more than your EFC, they will raise your EFC. So if you have a 529, you got 60,000 in it, divide it by 4, you're good to go. Don't overthink it, because that question always brings a lot of angst. So
another way that I ask that is I say, whatever your income is, say 10% or less of that, right? If you make 100 grand, say you can pay 10 grand a year. If you say you make 200 grand, say you can pay, well, I would say less, 10% at the most for what you think.
yeah, but you guys will all know your EFCs because you'll have your MyCap account. So you will never put more than your EFC.
Good advice.
Okay. Okay.
So let's see, anything else for you, Peggy, before I get to kind of next steps and where do we go from here? I got a whole bunch of questions on, I need to complete the CSS profile, but the other biological parent is not willing to cooperate. We don't know where they are. There's a protective order, you know, how do I get them to do it? Do I have to? No. Okay. You're not going to be punished if you're dealing with a really challenging situation like that, outside of having to do some extra legwork. Because what you do have to do is you have to reach out to each of those schools individually that are requiring that non-custodial profile, explain to them the situation, and they're going to have, each college has their own process, right? You're not the only one going through this really tough situation. They each have their own process, and they're going to have you apply for what's called the non-custodial waiver, which is basically another application, right? To say, here's what's going on. We have no control over this situation. We don't know what, you know, where they are, whatever your situation is. Okay. And then they have a committee that reviews it and will typically say, I shouldn't say typically, hopefully say, we get it. Don't worry about it. We'll just say that we're not getting that information and we'll give you your financial aid only based on your household. Okay. But especially for those of you that are going through a really nasty situation, the student's not going to be punished for it. You as the parent's not going to be punished for it, outside of having to disclose some personal things you'd rather not share with these strangers in these colleges' financial aid office. Okay. But it's a step you do have to go through, and you got to be proactive here. Okay. Now, in terms of next steps, you know, here's the deal. I mean, a couple things, right? And Peggy and I always say, no matter what, if we've done our job, you got to do something, right? Don't just do nothing tonight. Don't have it be tonight be kind of your last interaction here. Peg, if you can put this in the chat, or I'll put it in the chat.
No, I got it. I just
okay. So this is our financial aid survivor kit. It has obviously the CSS profile didn't cooperate with us tonight. The FAFSA didn't, but it has line by line instructions through there. So if you're a DIYer, that's your best bet. Right? Those are resources you can do it yourself. What I would recommend, and this is my recommendation to everybody, and a firm recommendation, go into your MyCap account, okay, select, and you can do it right here. Let me click on this here, right? And then you just select in the top right, if you're in our free account, it'll say upgrade here. If you've already paid, it'll say talk to an expert. Select that and either upgrade to the valedictorian or book a meeting with talk to an expert, and let us review your financial aid applications before you submit these things. And if you've already submitted it, still book that hour, because we'll be able to tell you if you made a mistake, if there's an opportunity to get more money based on some strategies that we can identify in there. And that happens all the time, right? So for tonight only, there's a coupon code. Use coupon code FORMS23. So all capital FORMS 23, you're going to get 23% off of that. It's tonight only. Okay. You'll see, we're going to send the recording tomorrow. We're going to send the slide deck. There'll be a coupon code, but I think it's for, I don't know what percentage it is off, but it's not, I promise you it's not 23%. So we like to kind of reward our live applicants, you know, and I feel so strong.
The coupon code in the chat too, everybody.
Okay, so the coupon code's in the chat. So you just upgrade here in your MyCap account, choose to talk to an expert or upgrade to valedictorian. A couple things here. Number one, if you say, you know what, that wasn't worth my money, this is recorded. You'll be able to play it back to us. Full refund, no questions asked. That's kind of how strongly I feel about this in terms of a return on investment that we're going to be able to give you, because we'll be able to look at your forms. We'll be able to tell you how to maximize your odds of getting the most in financial aid, make sure you're not making those mistakes, and ask anything else, right? You can say, hey, here's the schools we're applying to so far. What other schools should we be looking for that are direct competitors or are going to give us more money? You also get access to our platform here for a year, right? That's included in addition to that 1 hour meeting. So it's one of these things. Obviously, I'm biased, guys. I want you to buy here. That's good for business, right? I'm telling you that, we benefit from it if you do, but I honest to God believe it is a smart investment and you are going to see a return on it. And even if and this happens, right? I had one of these earlier today where I was sitting with a family reviewing their forms and they basically nailed it. Basically everything was perfect, but they still said, you know what? That was great. We just wanted to make sure we wanted somebody else to be looking over our shoulder that's done this a million times. Make sure that we're doing everything right. And that was money well spent for them. So don't overthink it. Now, here's the deal. I know we don't have any availability before November 1st. So if you have a November 1st deadline, I would anticipate, I don't think we're going to be able to accommodate you. Still write into us. So write into support@collegeaidpro.com. If you really want an hour before November 1st, write into us. I don't know if we're going to be able to accommodate it, but we'll try. I'll see if we can get you in something this weekend or maybe something on Monday, but that's not a promise for everybody else. And that'll be most people. Do it. But again, we don't have a ton of availability. I'm not trying to create scarcity mentality. That's just the deal, right? You'll see when our earliest availability is, and I know it's not before the 1st. So that's a firm recommendation. The other thing that I'll just share with you is, and another, maybe you can, or this is within your financial aid survivor kit too. For some people, and we just know that a percentage of people fall into this category, you just rather be hands off. You don't have the time. You don't have the expertise. You think there's too much at stake here. We can do the forms for you. Okay. So we have a process called Wake Me When It's Over, where you work with one of our experts one-on-one from now until your kid moves into the dorm, right? Because it's not just the forms. It's the forms. We're going to finalize the list of schools. Once we get the offers back, we're going to go back to the colleges and get more money out of them. Peg doesn't let me say negotiate, but that's what we're doing. We're appealing for more financial aid. Okay. Then we got to figure out how to pay this bill and that whole piece. So that's a part of the process that we have as well. That again,
I
is
put the link in the chat for that.
Okay. So it's a lot more money, guys. You're working with someone one-on-one, unlimited hours for the next year. So it's $3,000, but that coupon code, or $29.99, but that coupon code is worth $500 off. This one, we will only take a few more clients for the class 2023. So again, if you wanted to do it, that's something I recommend you book tonight, and that $500 off will only be good for tonight. I know that's not for everybody. And I know it's a scary sticker price, but for folks that sounds appealing to, that's what that option looks like. So that's the recommendation, guys. I mean, the big one is do something. The other one, Peggy, do you have, I can actually do it now, the office hours link?
Yep. I'll put that in right now.
Okay. So if you don't want to upgrade and book an hour with us, or you're not a good candidate for our Wake Me When It's Over service, what I would recommend is, and I would recommend this anyways, is book make sure you register with that link that Peggy just put in the chat. We do office hours every other week. Peg, myself, Dan, a couple of our other colleagues will have different guests on, essentially do an open grab bag. So if you're just like, hey, I just got a kind of a one-off question. It doesn't make sense for me to book an hour with anybody. I can't get it in the MyCap platform. We're hanging out every other week for an hour. Now, obviously, we can't get to every question. It's similar tonight. We get a full room and we do the best we can, but that's just another resource. It's a free resource. And just in general, Peg, myself, and our team, we're not going anywhere. Like I said, this is all we do. And we do it usually multiple times a week, something like this. And obviously for certain events, for those of you that have tuned in before, we do deals like this and where we reward our live audience with a significant discount. So again, guys, don't overthink it, right? I know 290, whatever it comes out to a little over $200. That's not nothing, but you get access to the platform for a year, and it's going to be, you're going to get a return on the investment. So don't overthink it. And if you don't, call me out. We'll give you your money back. So, you know, I know I'm giving you the hard sell here, but it's because I firmly believe in what we're offering here. So I think those are my parting words. Peg, do you have any? Do we have any more? I know we didn't get to all the questions, and I got to imagine, Peggy, I got to imagine this is close to a record in terms of questions.
Yeah,
asked. What do you think?
I agree. The only last thing I'm going to show is everybody can be calm and look at my puppy dog. That's my puppy dog, Ashling. So we started with the whale fluke. Now we end with the dog. How can you not have a warm heart looking at my baby girl? So guys, seriously, I mean, all kidding aside, you know, just take a deep breath. It's not the end of the world. We're here to help. Hopefully, and you know, sorry, and somebody even wrote in, I can't get into CSS either. So I don't know what they're doing this year because they've never had these issues. So you'll get through it. Don't wait till the last minute and just join our community, if nothing else.
And Peg, I don't know if you saw this at all tonight, but some emotions were running high in the chat. It got a little chippy in there. I don't know if you saw that at all.
No,
so like,
I was so focused on the Q&A.
And you know, exactly. And we told people to put all questions in Q&A, but we had a couple folks come out to enforce enforce questions going into the chat, which I think was well-intentioned, but it was a little, it was enforced. Let's put it that way. So, guys, emotions run high with this thing. It's your kids and your money, right? It's your kids and your money. It makes a lot of sense. And guys, I know we didn't answer every question. We always end every night with, I'm sorry, please do not take it personal. No, we're busting our butts to get to every question possible, but that's why book an hour. If you don't want to book an hour, keep attending our free webinars, come to our office hours, right into the community within MyCap, right? You know, we want to help everyone, and hopefully we walk the walk with that. At least we do our best to, I think, right, Peggy?
We do our best each and every day. So everybody have a great night, and we will see you all soon.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Bye,
Take
Peggy.
care.